Good day and God bless, ma'am. So today I am going to discuss the ethical philosophy of Santomas Aquinas. But before that, I would like to introduce myself first. By the way, my name is Hazel Mie Morales, taking course of Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English. So, shall we start discussing the ethical philosophy of Santomas Aquinas? Santomas Aquinas is an Italian Catholic priest who belongs to the religious order of preachers or Dominicans. Saint Thomas Aquinas was born to a noble family in Italy on 1225. The title Aquinas identifies his place of origin, Aquino, which belonged originally to the kingdom of Naples and about 100 kilometers south of Rome. He was to an affluent and influential family. His father was recognized as the Count of Aquino. As a young man, he went to study at the University of Naples and there came into contact with a source of knowledge which had just then been rediscovered, the texts of ancient Greek and Roman authors. His early studies were under the tutelage of the Benedictine abbot of Monte Cassino, but at the age of 14, he enrolled at the University of Naples. He was deeply impressed by the Dominicans, who he later met at this university, that Thomas decided to join the order of preacher at the age of 19 in 1244, instead of the Benedictines who were his first teachers. After the struggle with his family, who did not agree with his being a priest, was finally settled, Thomas in 1248 studied with Albert the Great on 1205 to 1280 in Colony. Albert took Thomas with him to the University of Paris. Thomas later became the Master of Theology in this university on 1256, and the remaining 18 years of his life we spent on lectures and structures, writings, and codelibetes in a dialogue somewhat akin to the ancient symposiums of the Greek. Saint Thomas Aquinas died on March 7, 1274, leaving behind him notable works like Summa contra Gentiles, Summa Theology, and De Veritate. The Catholic Church honors him as a doctor, a title given to saints who are recognized as giver of particularly important insights in the understanding of Christian doctrine or faith. One of the options, if one want to call it that, was arrived at through the meeting between philosophy and the religion of revelation in Christianity. The best representative of this integration, and arguably also an excellent thinking through of a reasonable way that addresses the questions of the human person, is the philosophy of Saint Thomas Aquinas. His ethical system endures until contemporary times, and the moral guidelines followed and lived out by religious believers who belong to the Catholic traditions. So let's proceed the Este Dios non Daritor. Thomas Aquinas begins from the standpoint of faith. His perspective presupposes the existence of the God who is the author or the source and the goal or end of all reality. This creator for Thomas, however, relates in freedom to recognize true reason, the very principle of foundations of all things. In accordance with his foundational knowledge, the human person can choose to act in such a way that is worthy of one's very reality. The human being then is said to be gifted with the ability to know the highest good. That engages him or her in freedom, in choosing to act on the good that he or she ought to do. The freedom here is knowing the best goal and being goal to reach for it through decision action. For Aquinas, God reveals his God will as eternal law is reflected in the order of reality. The reality then of life as growth, nutrition, and reproduction is founded on the will that is eternal. Even the reality of sensitive consciousness as ruled by instinct that is true of animals is also in accordance with the same will. That plants perceives to carry themselves out of the fullness of being plants is an imprint of the governing will that comes to human understanding as law. That animals governed by instinct behave in such a way is also recognized by human person as following the dictate of a law that guides all of creation. Human freedom of Santomas, therefore, is an imprint of the divine will in the very being of a human person. Aquinas recognizes four main kinds of law: the eternal, the natural, the human, and the divine. The eternal law is identical to the mind of God as seen by God Himself. It can be called law because God stands to the universe which He creates as a ruler does to community which He rules. When God's reason is considered as it is understood by God Himself in its unchanging, eternal nature, it is eternal law. Divine law is derived from eternal law as it appears historically to humans, especially through revelation when it appears to human beings as divine commands. Divine law is divided into Old Law and New Law. The Old and New Law roughly corresponding to the Old and New Testaments of Bible. When speaks of the Old Law, Thomas is thinking mainly of the Ten Commandments. When he speaks of the New Law, the teaching of Jesus. Human law, Thomas' philosophy, as we should expect knowing how much he is intended to Aristotle, is perverted with the sense of technology. Nowhere is the clearer and more important than in his discussion of human law. You might think here that he would define human law as what we sometimes nowadays call positive law. But in the fact, human law fits just those so-called positive laws, which are what written and enacted laws should be. So-called laws which falls short of what wise should be are not true laws at all. According to Thomas, I shall hold of giving Thomas' own definition of human law because it relies upon the concept of natural law to which we will turn to later. We can say now that Thomas thinks of human law as laws devised by human reason adapted to particular geographical, historical, and social circumstances. This ethics of natural law has gained wide acceptance at one point in the history of Western civilization that has come to be exposed even if 1% from the faith system that has engendered it. Et si Dios non daretur is an expression that highlights the validity of this ethical system with or without faith in the Creator of God. This implies that the wisdom of the ethical system, that is natural law, is valid and bending of the human person even if we bracket believe in God. Conscience and natural law. The conscience absolutely binds us in doing the good and avoiding evil. Conscience is also absolutely tasked to be given information. The conscience, therefore, can be mistaken, and being so does not exempt the human person from culpability. If he or she is able to know but fails to act in his or her obligation to do so, then he or she is not free from blame and responsibility for what was done. There are different kinds of conscience that may lead us to wrongdoing. Callous, perplexed, scrupulous. The uninformed conscience simply lacks education, while the perplexed one needs guidance in sorting out one's confusion. The callous and scrupulous are binary opposites, but both are malformed in being too lax or too strict. St. Thomas Aquinas' conscience remains to be our approximate norm that bids us to do the good and avoid evil. Simply put, going against one's knowingly elects as good. Act on the good and shun the bad. These occasions again show the importance of the commitment to educate one's conscience, basically because one cannot do good if one does not know it, and since one's norm for acting is the obligation that is set by one's conscience. Acquisition of knowledge as what ought to be done through education is critical for ethical living. That's according to St. Thomas Aquinas. So let's proceed the three contemporary questions. The first one is who am I? Who am I is a domestic natural law interrogates the identity of the human person. If one is endowed with his or her own facticity, history, and abilities, his or her present reality is accessible to him or her through self-knowledge and reflection. The second one question is who do I want to be? Who do I want to be is the human person's self-knowledge is dynamic. That is, it is always open to the direction set by what one wants to make of himself or herself. Self-knowledge here is malleable towards self-determination. Ethical acts give direction through freedom to build up the self towards a particular goal. So let's proceed the third question. How can I get there? How can I get there also fully utilizes the sound judgment of human reason and evaluates the best route to get to the goal decided upon. The last question breaks down the task to be done into the particular of actions and daily routine. Self-knowledge and self-determination are here bridged by self-governance. So last but not the least, the rational and perfection of love in Aquinas. Ultimately, as held by Santomas himself, the true destiny of man lies in a gratuitous perfection that is beyond the human person yet relates with him or her thoroughly in freedom and therefore in fullness of love. This relationship and loving invitation exist the possibilities of achievements and realizations that are reachable by the human person in himself or herself. It may called spiritual, beatific, or heavenly, but in the expanse of what is the desired and what is reasonably attainable by the human person. The highest perfection of man for St. Thomas is in his or her wanting to be with God. In the words that are used by believers, the ethical man is not a perfect man, but one who wants to be saved by cooperating in freedom with what is attainable for him or her.